and welcome to Soulful Living Miniseries, where we bring your drama and your trauma to the table. I'm Dr. Stacy, and today we're going to be talking about trauma. What is trauma? Where does it come from? How do we deal with it? And what do we do to make new steps in our lives so we can become progressively better over a period of time? So, the first thing I want to explain to you is what trauma is. Trauma is a deep emotional, physical response to a fear of danger. And what happens is we have three different types of trauma as a result of being exposed to dangerous events. So you can have acute trauma, which is something that occurred in the moment, like a car accident. So you have the trauma from the car accident. You have chronic trauma from being exposed to stressful situations, stressful events over 6 months or greater period of time. And then you have complex trauma, which normally involves other people, and it also lasted over a long period of time, 6 months or greater. What happens when people have trauma? We throw this word around all the time: trauma, trauma, trauma. But what actually happens with trauma is you develop symptoms. And those symptoms are everything from flashbacks, where you think you are in that moment. You have nightmares that happen while you're sleeping. You recall those things or events that are similar to it. You have different things like relationship issues. You have difficulty maintaining jobs. You have difficulty maintaining community service kind of events, community service kind of activities. It affects you in all levels. It affects you in the home life. It affects you in the community. It affects you in school or work. So all three areas are normally affected when you're dealing with trauma. Trauma itself shows up in so many different ways. It can show up as depression. It can show up as anxiety. It can show up as sleeping too much. It shows up all kinds of ways. It can show up as you acting numb towards situations, numb towards people, not being able to connect to people. These are all trauma related activities, trauma related responses. What do we do and how do we meet it? How do we greet it? The first thing is when you look at your life. I always talk about Abraham Maslow. It is a hierarchy of need, a basic pyramid. At the bottom of the pyramid, it talks about food, water, sleep, shelter. The next portion of it talks about love and safety and security. Then it goes to love and belonging. And then the next level is self-esteem, self-respect. And then the top of it is self-actualization. Well, we work our way from the bottom of the pyramid to the top of the pyramid. And so the first thing we have to look at is what's going on with your sleeping patterns? What's going on with your resting? What is going on with your oxygen, your eating? What is going on in that bottom level that is affecting you? Then we go to with your safety and security. Do you feel safe? And are there spaces that you feel safer at or you don't feel safer in? For example, if you have your light bill that is due and you know that the lights are getting ready to be shut off, that automatically disturbs your safety and security. And so that has to be dealt with. Love and belonging, the circles that you're in. Do you feel appreciated? Do you feel wanted? Do you feel desired? Do you feel like you're a part of that inner circle? Self esteem, what is happening on the outside of you? What are you hearing about who you are? What self esteem comes from the outside. And then self respect, the standard from which you decide you're going to live. And then the top of the pyramid, self actualization. This is who I say that I am. Well, when we think about trauma and how that pyramid works together, trauma is affected with the pyramid. So, what that looks like is, when is the last time you had to holler, scream, cuss, fuss, fight, any of that stuff? That means that somewhere on your pyramid, you were affected. And I talk about Maslow's hierarchy of need as this pyramid because I've been using it for years. I remember when I first found out about it, I was in my early 20s and I found out about this pyramid. And I love the pyramid because what it allows you to do is identify what area of your life you're having a problem with. So, say that you've been working 16-hour days and you're going back and forth to work and you're on day 5 of a 16-hour day. You haven't had an opportunity to rest. Now, you've had an opportunity to sleep, but you haven't had an opportunity to rest. So what happens? You fool around, you get hungry, you're tired, and you have to go to the bathroom, one of those three things, and somebody honks their horn at you at the light. And guess what? You get out and you start cussing, fussing, screaming. That's because you were violated at the bottom of your pyramid and rest. This even happens even worse when you have trauma, because guess what? Now that honk on the horn becomes threatening. It becomes something that you have to defend yourself to. And so what happens is we find people in, the fast food restaurants and at the gas station pulling out knives and cutting people because somebody honked a horn at them. But the problem was that they were affected in their pyramid, coupled with a trauma response. And all of a sudden now you got a major event going on. How do we fix this? The first thing is I need everybody on this podcast to be able to identify when you are being violated. What area in your life is being violated? What's being touched? We talk about the pyramid, the bottom of it. Do you get 8 hours worth of sleep? Are you having opportunities to rest between activities? In other words, are you, work 2 days, break. Work 2 days, take a break. Work 5 days, break over the weekend. It doesn't matter, but you must give yourself an opportunity to break. You must have a set schedule. You work, whatever that work looks like, from 9 to 5 or 7 a to 7 p, whatever that time of your work schedule is, allocate that time as the time that you work so that you build in rest periods for yourself. The second thing, I'm going up the pyramid, guys, is safety and security. What areas in your life don't you feel safe about? If it is you need to go back to school for more finances, if it is your household not being able to get your bills under control, maybe getting a second job, if it is relationship-wise, it doesn't matter. I need you to identify those places in your life where you don't feel safe. The third level, love and belonging. Do you have what we call organic social circles? Those circles where you can go and be a duck in the water with your people, i.e., if you like to sing, do you go do karaoke? If you like to do artwork, do you find an art club to go to? If you like to read, if you join a book club, you need to find organic social circles that validate who you are. And there's nothing wrong with validation. Let me say there's nothing wrong with being validated. In other words, somebody saying, I like who you are. You're just like me. So those organic social circles are extremely important. The fourth level up is self-esteem, which is what's going on in your ears, what circles of influence are around you that are giving you information, that are feeding into you, that are telling you that you are smart, you are wonderful, you can make it. Like, who's in your ear? And you may not have a particular person to be in your ear, so you may end up listening to podcasts, listening to YouTube videos, listening to things that inspire you. But every day you need to put some of this in. And then respect, the self-respect. How do you actively look at where you are today and use what you have? You may not have a lot of resources. You may not have 50 pair of outfits, but you may have 5, but you make sure that you wear those 5 outfits and wear those effectively. Get up in the morning and make your bed. When your feet hit the floor, and I know it sounds like I'm talking like, what are you talking? Make your bed up. When you get out the bed, turn around, flip the sheet up, put the pillows back in place, and start your day with your bed made. I'm talking about standard of operation, getting the dishes out of the sink. Just take just the basic stuff that you think is not important. That is about a standard of life that you have decided that this is how I live. And then at the top of the pyramid, you get to the place where you say, hey, this is who I am. This is the quality of person who I am. This is how I live. This is what I do every day. This is the person I am. I am self-actualized here. When you think about this pyramid and people be able to violate you in any of these places, for example, safety and security, your light bill or relationship, somebody cheating on you, all that stuff like that, you get violated, you cuss, fuss, all the stuff that go along with it. love and belonging. You're not in places where people are telling you that you are smart and beautiful and handsome and all the stuff that goes along with saying, I am a spectacular person. It is so important about the self esteem for people to be around you to clap their hands for you. If you don't have a hand clapper around you, you need to find you some people around there. All they do is say, I'm proud of you. You do a great job. You need that. You may think that you don't need it, but you do need somebody in your ear pointing you in the right direction. I don't know if you have mentors, but if you don't have a mentor, every person needs a mentor in three areas. You need a mentor for family life. You need a mentor for financial life. You need a mentor for spiritual life. And family life includes all the biological stuff like, how do you live? Where do you eat? Do you exercise? All the stuff like that. So you need a mentor for all three of those areas. And I highly recommend three different people that you can touch bases with on a monthly basis so that they can help you what do your finances look like, helping you come up with your fiscal goals for your life. Like, what does your life look like? Where are you at right now? Whether you own a business or whether you are working jobs or going back to school, that person that is helping you with your fiscal place of mentorship is going to talk about all those different things of your life. Then the other thing that I do recommend to you is that you want to create spaces where you're able to live the kind of life that you are qualified to live right now. And I know that word is like qualified to live. In other words, like you've put the time in to do certain things. And so because you put the time in to do certain things, you are supposed to live in this kind of home. You're supposed to live in this kind of house. You are supposed to because you put that time in. So you need to make sure that you are creating those spaces and giving yourself permission to do that. Now, what does all this have to do with trauma, y'all? All this has to do with trauma because when you think about who you are as a person, trauma responses occur because a lot of these factors aren't in place. And the moment that somebody touches you in the wrong spot, guess what? You go off. And you're going off because of your history, your past, your pain, the stuff that you've experienced as a child. A lot of the trauma has occurred in childhood, and then young adulthood is where most of the trauma occurs. Childhood up to about age 25. And that shifts our paradigm. It shifts the way we view the world. It shifts the way that we receive people, receive information. It's a pair of glasses that we put on. In other words, am I in a safe space? Am I in a space where I'm able to be my authentic self? Can I trust the words that is coming out of this person's mouth? Can I trust this wife, this husband? Can I trust them? And I promise you, it is from the things that you have experienced in your childhood and early adulthood. Those are the things that become the infrastructure for how you do business on a regular basis. Now, when you are regularly doing your business and you're living life, and I brought up the basic structure, I brought up the pyramid to you, and I said about the mentors, and I told you some things that you need to do just to have as basic elements that you need to be operating from. When you have trauma, and I got my own trauma, I'm telling you, when you have trauma, when you are living at a certain level, a certain standard, a certain space, when you live and you have mentors that you're reaching into all the time, and then you've gotten your rest all the time, and everything is safe and secure. You've got your organic social circles that you're participating in. You have people in your ear that are telling you you're smart, you're beautiful, you can make it. When you self-actualize, this is who I am, this is who I want to be. When somebody rubs you a certain kind of way, you don't respond that way. Because now, guess what? You have all of these coping skills and coping mechanisms and coping infrastructure. That's what that is. It's a real infrastructure that is in place that allows you, when you get rubbed, it doesn't hurt as bad. When somebody says something to you, you don't yell, cuss, scream. You're able to take a deep breath in, hold it, blow it out. You're able to breathe through that thing. It doesn't mean that you're not affected by the same stuff that everybody else is affected by. It's that now you have all these tools in your toolbox that you're able to effectively pull out and you're able to effectively lean on. So I want you to think about, what are some things in your life that you have that are resources for you when you feel stressed. It's not just about the deep breathing techniques and identifying your behavior triggers. And let me talk about that. So, your behavior triggers are what makes me upset. Just had an incident where I was at my daughter's school and getting her registered for her senior year in college. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Shout out to Hampton University. So we were there, and I was sitting in the lobby waiting for her name to be called, or my name to be called, because she wasn't there, but her name to be called so that I could go and, talk about financial aid and things. So I sat there, and I had been up to the school like 3 different times, two guys trying to get this situation squared away with her financial aid. And so when I walk up, I say to the lady, my name is, Stacy, and I'm here trying to get my daughter's financial aid squared away. And this is my third time being here, and I really need this to be resolved. So she said, just have a seat, ma'am. So I sat down. And I promise you, I sat there, and 1 hour went past. I sat there again. Second hour went past. People were being seen up and down, up and down, and up and down. So finally, about the 2.5 hour mark, identifying behavior triggers, I knew I was starting to get triggered. I knew that I was like, okay, I've been here 2 hours. I done watched them call everybody's name but mine. I said, I have to speak up. So I literally took a deep breath in, held it, blew it out, and said, I have to do something now, because I felt my little heart starting to beat, and I started myself a little sweat a little bit. And I said, let me fix this. So I walked up to the counter and very gingerly began to express my concerns about sitting, and that this was my third or fourth time trying to resolve the issue. And to God be the glory, the manager comes out and she hears me talking very gingerly, and she says to the lady, I'm going to take care of her. And I said, Lord, I thank you so much. This lady decided that she was going to come out here and take care of me. She took care of me very quick. 15 minutes, I was in and out after she got me. But I need you to be able to identify when you feel yourself going up. When you feel, before you go off, long before you go off, you felt your heart rate going up. You felt that you was tired of sitting. I was tired of sitting in the chair. You felt that you were getting aggravated before you were truly aggravated. You felt like, I done seen like 50 people go up in the line. When is it my turn? That was going in my head. When is it my turn? So I was able to identify that I needed to do something before you go off. And that's what happens with people who have trauma. They don't know how to get from point A to point B without the trauma and the drama. They don't know how to say, it's okay for you to just walk up to the lady and say what you need. You don't have to sit there and wait. Remember, what trauma is, you're frightened by it, and you've been in dangerous situations, so you always in fight or flight or freeze response. You're in those responses at all times. So you either think that you need to just get up and start swinging or yelling, or you sit there and you freeze, but you can respond by taking a deep breath. And what that deep breath does, it actually resets the brain. So when the fear comes in, the anxiety, all the stuff that makes you say, I don't have a voice, when that happens, you take a deep breath in, hold it, blow it out. And that is a literal reset for the brain. The brain actually resets itself due to the oxygen. And then you come back to the table and you ask yourself 3 questions. What do I need to do? What do I need to fix? How is this affecting me? So those are the questions that need to run in your head immediately. I'm affected by this. How is this affecting me? Okay, what do I need to do, and what do I need from the person that I'm trying to get from them? So, we think about with your communication, remember, it is the messenger, the message, and the person who is receiving the information. So I, as the messenger now, am able to take a deep breath in, hold it, blow it out, get my trauma under control. In other words, my fear, that I'm in a dangerous situation, or that I don't have a voice, that I have to freeze. I don't have to freeze. I can speak and tell people exactly what I need effectively. And so say that you're in a situation where you're doing all of that. You've done all the deep breathing, and you get ready to say to the person, and you still feel yourself being triggered. You feel yourself going up, 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 up. It is always okay for you to evacuate the space. It is always, always, always okay for you to get your purse, get your wallet, get your keys, and leave the space. Get up and leave. Get up and leave, because the other people don't know that you got trauma. They don't know what's going on inside of your head. So it is always okay when you first feel your heartbeat beating just a little bit for you to say, okay, this is not a good space for me. Let me get up and let me leave. And literally leave the space, leave the environment so that your brain can have an opportunity to reset. What happens when you don't leave? That trauma response kicks in, and all this stuff that is related to fight or flight kicks in. That's what happens. Guess what? All those neurotransmitters start pumping through your brain, adrenaline and all that stuff, and all of a sudden, and that stuff is real. When I say those neurotransmitters getting down inside of your synaptic gap in your brain and telling you you need to defend yourself, it is real. It is, you are not faking. You get foggy and you're thinking. You can be forgetful. You can have anxiety. Your body is sweating. Remember, your brain cannot differentiate between if this is happening right now or if it is happening in the past. And what happens is when you're faced with a situation, your brain is connecting to a past situation that occurred. Say that you've been abused in the past, and somebody's yelling and screaming at you and coming at you. You really believe that they gonna hit you, because guess what? You got hit before. So you believe you're going to be hit again. And so you respond like you're trying to kill somebody, because you have been in a situation before when somebody tried to do something to you and there was no help. So guess what you do? You do turn around and pick up that chair and swing on that person because you think they gonna hit you first. That's a trauma response, y'all. And so before you get there, identifying that I am having a moment. I am having, like, I need to breathe through this. And if you're not able to breathe through it, I need to leave the space. There should never be any circumstances where you're anywhere where you cannot leave the space. You might have to leave your car. You might have to get up and leave your purse. You might have to leave some stuff behind. But you do better to leave all that stuff behind and you exit left to gather yourself so you can think. Because what the trauma response does, it stops you from thinking. It stops you from being able to navigate. We call it executive function. It's right here in the front of your head. So what executive function does is it allows you to think past the moment of hitting somebody. It allows you to think past the moment of, impulse. It's that whole impulse control space. So what happens is you're able to think, I'm going to hit you. You're going to hit me back. Then I'm going to hit you 3 times. And then you're going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and then the police going to come, and then this going to come. That's what executive function allows you to do. It allows you to think 6 and 7 steps up. Well, what happens with people who have severe trauma? Their executive function doesn't quite work. People with hyperactivity, anxiety, your executive, we call it EF, that spot is significantly important because it is the space in your brain that allows you to think past this moment. It says, if I do this, then that's going to happen. That's what executive function does. When you have trauma, your executive function isn't developed. So guess what? You're not really thinking past, after I hit you with this chair, what's going to happen later. You just, I hit you with the chair and that's going to happen. But you're not thinking about all the word sequela. You're not thinking about all the sequela that's going to occur after that. So it's important that you give yourself permission to exit left. So that's the key word for everybody. I need you to give yourself permission to exit left while you're getting yourself under control. Because if you have trauma, remember the 3 kinds: acute trauma, chronic trauma, complex trauma. And complex is the worst because that means that there was some stuff going on. When you were a 6-year-old little boy, 6-year-old little girl. It's like some stuff that really happened that built out the network for how you view the world. Is the world a safe space? Can I trust people? Will I get hit? Will somebody mishandle me in private? Like, all that stuff is relevant for how you deal with people in general. And so it is always okay for you to get up, get your purse, get your wallet, get your keys, and leave the space. Give yourself an opportunity to re-navigate what has actually happened. And then when you get to those spaces, what do you do when you get to those spaces? You're going to do deep breathing exercises. You are going to journal that night. It's all right. And let me tell you why. Journaling is so important because it allows all that information that's in your head to be dumped on a piece of paper somewhere. So you need to write as much of this stuff that's inside of you, put it somewhere. I do music, art, and dance therapy on purpose because sometimes, guys, there's just no words for how you're feeling. Sometimes you're feeling like I wrote this poem one time and said, I'm mad at somebody, but I don't know who, and I want to hit somebody, but I don't know why. I mean, that's what happens sometimes. Sometimes we got so much stuff going on inside of us. We don't know who we mad at, why we mad, but we know we're agitated about something, and there's no words for it. So that's the beauty of music, art, and dance therapy is that you could just begin to draw, and all of a sudden, you got this picture like, what is that? Or you're dancing it out, and all the stuff that's inside of you is no longer there. I remember when the Lord allowed me to first start dancing. I didn't know it was therapeutic. I was about 24, 25 years old, and I'd really gone through a lot of traumatic events since 6 years old, all the way up until that point. And I remember God said to me, He said, "You're going to dance for me." And it was way back in the early 90s, guys. And I began to just dance. And I remember dancing so hard that I couldn't move the next day. And I was dancing my troubles, my pain out, all of my pain. I put it on the floor. And the beautiful part about it was I was able to use praise and worship music to be able to minister to myself and to the people. Minister, serve, heal myself and to the people. So the people got the benefit of it as well as me. But I got healed in the dance. And every dance, y'all, I left it on. I did not leave that dance in the worship space. I didn't leave nothing behind. I left no trauma, but whatever I was dealing with, it was going in that dance. And so I highly recommend dancing. I highly recommend music. If you're a singer, even with our little kids, if we can get our kids like rapping and doing poetry and all that stuff like that, let them talk about that stuff. They looked at the difference between those people that had traumatic brain kind of things going on, like traumatic care. The people that we were doing the most traumatic care for, it was a group of people who didn't talk about their stuff. Do you know how therapeutic it is for you to talk about what happened to you when you were 6 years old, 14, 20, 25 years old? Writing books about this stuff, journaling about it, dancing about it, writing songs about it, writing poetry about it. You got to get that mess out of you, because what happens is it sits in you, and then you do what's called ruminating. It's like you think it, you play it over and over and over in your mind because you ain't put it nowhere. You got to put this garbage out of you. It is okay for you to talk about this. Find you a safe space, a safe person for you to be able to talk about, this is what's going on inside of me. And let me explain another part about trauma responses. Trauma responses can occur in so many ways. It can occur from just smells, like you can walk past something and smell something, and it'll take you back to when you were 6 years old. You can see something, you can hear a certain noise, and in your brain, the way your brain is wired is that particular smell or thought will cause you to go back to that memory. And all of a sudden, you sitting in a space and you feeling like sort of, your body posture's here, and it's like, what happened? And it's because something happened. You got triggered somewhere in the environment. So a lot of questions that I always ask is, what was happening right before you felt that way? What were you doing? A person says, oh, I was in the kitchen, I was listening, this song came on the radio. And I say, well, tell me about the song. And then they'll say, that was a song that was playing when this particular thing happened. And so, that's how easy our brain is triggered to take us back to a traumatic space. And when you think about trauma has to occur based on a physical thing happening and an emotional thing happening at the same time. So something physically is occurring and it causes an emotional response, and then that connects. So we do this thing called neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP. And NLP actually does that on a positive way, where it connects a positive feeling with an emotion or an event. So you rub, and then it's a whole procedure. I'll go into that later. But anyways, long story short, that's almost what trauma is, but it's backwards. So it's a really negative emotion with something that occurred. And so when you feel that, or you exposed to it, the emotion and the feeling come together, and it causes you to react a certain kind of way. And so trauma is a big deal, guys, and we see it and we minimize it so much. Now, what does that look like in terms of bagging up with, like, how do we fix it from the gate? Well, nobody's born with mental health illness. I say this all the time. Nobody is born with a mental health illness. It is developed over time. How is it developed? Lack of stress relief techniques, no coping skills, high stress activities, and exposure to things that are dangerous or frightening. That's how trauma occurs. But mental health has a lot of different variables, as long as being what we use this word called familiar. In other words, your grandmother had schizophrenia. So her brain network was sort of wired that way. You were in the household with grandmother who was talking to herself all the time. You may be in a household where, or somebody may be in a household where they were exposed to drugs or all the different things that are traumatic. And because they saw it, then they develop it. So it's not that it's genetic, it's just familiar. It's like, this is what everybody has been doing. We've seen this in our family line for all these years. And so I've seen drug addicts, or I've seen people with schizophrenia. So guess what? When I'm stressed out, I'm hollering and screaming, or bipolar disorder, undiagnosed. So you see all these behaviors, and then here all of a sudden you're behaving in that way because it's familiar to you, i.e., family, and similar, like familiar, like this is what we do. And so you develop a particular behavior based on what you've seen in the past, as well as genetically, predisposed to some things like that. So when you think about your trauma, guys, as we sort of wrap up this conversation, I want you to walk away with these points as a person who's trying to do better in your life and get past keep having emotional outbursts. Like, if you're the person that continues to have emotional outbursts, if you continue to be in situations where you're fighting, yelling, cussing people out, crying, all that stuff like that, you don't have to live like that. It's not required. It is not a requirement of my life. I need you to say this. This is not a requirement of my life that I live this way every single day. I want you to use I am statements. I am statements. I am strong. I am smart. I am able. I am well able to take on my opponent. I am more than a conqueror. I am intelligent. I want you to begin to use I am statements when that fear creeps up on you. I want you to give yourself permission to leave the space. That don't mean run now. I'm not creating runners. I don't need y'all running over here, going to Georgia and Florida. I'm not telling you to run, but I am telling you it's okay for you to leave the space that's creating a high, intense level of anxiety for you or stressors. Leave that space. You're not required to work that job. If you don't like the job and you go into that job every day and you are highly stressed, it's 100 jobs. Go get another job. If you're in relationships where you're yelling, cussing, fighting, all that stuff like that, leave the relationship. If you are working in a job space where you are not safe, leave the job. Like, it is okay. Like, I gave you the example of, I was in this space, I was trying to work something out with, just getting some fight. I got up and I was going to talk to the lady, but if it didn't resolve, I was going to leave the space and come back tomorrow and try it again. Because it's okay for you to know when you've had enough. And I want you to be able to give yourself permission to say, I have had enough. And give yourself permission to know that, yes, you got trauma. And because I have trauma, my brain ain't networked like everybody else. I'm talking about myself now. I ain't talking about you. My brain ain't networked like everybody else. So I can't be in places where you yelling and screaming in my face. I'm hot. I'm tired. I got to go to the bathroom. Or I can't. I need to get up. I need to exit left. I need to dance. It's required for me. I need to sing and sing real loud sometimes. I need to paint and paint for 8 hours sometimes. I need that. Those are coping mechanisms that I built into my life. I need to exercise. That's a coping mechanism that has been built in. Oh, drink water, y'all. Drink as much water as you can. If you don't like water, I've been on this tea kick for a minute. But even if you're drinking tea or whatever it is, you need to hydrate. What that does is all those hormones that you are constantly being exposed to from just day-to-day life, driving out in the car and people are, honking horns at you. You're dealing with work, the water itself, the fluid itself, will take all those neurotransmitters that are in your brain, all those hormones that are in your brain, in your body, and you will pee it out. That's pretty much what happens. Because stress, it lives inside of your body. It stays inside of your cells. And so the hydration is what washes it out. That's why you need to hydrate. That's why we do all these different teas, and I'm really into the organic kind of way of doing with mental health treatment and all. Now that don't mean don't take your medication, y'all. Don't get up here and talk about, she said don't take your medication. But there are also other ways by hydrating, exercising, getting your 8 hours worth of sleep every day, making sure that you have all of these different spaces set up in your life as a tool for your success. Thank you so much for joining me as we're talking about trauma today. We will see you next time.
SKST Radio, street grind entertainment. Beats by bro, yeah, we bring the flavor in the pack.